A poor 10-year-old girl saves a billionaire's life on a plane, but what she asks for in return makes everyone cry. Elliot Graves checked his watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes. The boarding line for the commercial flight seemed to drag, and every lost second felt like a personal insult. The feeling of his expensive suit sticking to his sweaty back only worsened his mood. 20 minutes ago, his assistant informed him that his private jet had technical issues, a disruption that didn't fit into his schedule. The meeting in New York couldn't wait. 3 months of negotiations culminating in an 8-figure contract. "Mr. Graves," a flight attendant approached, "we've managed to secure a first-class seat for you. Please, follow me." Elliot nodded without a smile. At 40, he had no time for setbacks. "Any expected delays?" he asked, as he followed her down the priority aisle. "No, sir. Immediate boarding." At least there was that. The plane was almost full. Elliot stowed his leather briefcase in the overhead compartment and settled into his seat. He discreetly loosened his tie, feeling his body protest against the frantic routine he'd maintained since his mid-20s. 4 seats ahead, a curly-haired girl settled by the window. Her simple dress contrasted with the laptops and tablets of the executives around her. She carried only a worn sketchbook and observed every movement inside the aircraft with keen eyes. Elliot noticed her for a moment, then opened his tablet. Numbers, projections, charts, the world he knew well. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Flight 247 bound for New York City." He adjusted his headphones, tuning out the instructions. His eyes scanned the data as the aircraft taxied down the runway. The familiar sensation of takeoff, the roar of the engines. 40 minutes later, while reviewing the final slides of his presentation, the flight attendant passed by offering drinks. "Water, please," Elliot replied automatically, without looking up from his screen. As he raised the cup to drink, he felt it. It was subtle at first, an uncomfortable pressure in his chest that he attributed to stress. He took a sip of water and took a deep breath. The pressure intensified. His fingers loosened around the plastic cup, which fell, spilling water onto his lap. But Elliot barely noticed. Something was wrong. Very wrong. A sharp pain radiated across the left side of his chest, rising up his neck. His left arm tingled, then grew heavy. The tablet slipped to the floor. "Sir, are you all right?" The flight attendant's voice seemed to come from far away. Elliot tried to answer, but only a strangled sound escaped his throat. Sweat now poured down his face. His vision began to blur at the edges. "Is there a doctor on board? Medical emergency?" The flight attendant's voice blared over the intercom, sparking alarmed murmurs. Elliot felt his body slide down in the seat. The airplane's ceiling panel seemed to spin. "I'm having a heart attack," and he thought with surprising clarity. A middle-aged woman stood up a few rows back. "I'm a nurse," she announced, moving quickly to Elliot's seat. "Sir, can you hear me? Where are you feeling pain?" Elliot could no longer speak. The nurse checked his pulse, which grew weaker with each second. "I need to lay him down in the aisle. He's going into cardiac arrest." Panic spread like wildfire. Passengers stood up to see what was happening. Others recoiled in horror. "Please, remain calm and seated." The flight attendant's voice trembled. The nurse and a strong man helped lay Elliot down in the narrow aisle. The world spun, voices blurred together. "Is there a defibrillator on board?" the nurse asked, quickly unbuttoning Elliot's shirt. "We're getting it," someone replied. The pain was overwhelming now. Elliot felt his body grow heavy as if sinking through the aircraft floor. A buzzing filled his ears. "So he's not breathing, no pulse." The nurse positioned her hands over Elliot's chest and began compressions, counting aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4. Elliot's world darkened. The pain, strangely, began to subside. An intense cold spread through his limbs. "The defibrillator isn't working," someone shouted. "We're trying to reset it. Keep up the compressions." The nurse was already showing signs of fatigue after 2 minutes. "Can someone relieve me? I need to continue compressions until the defibrillator is ready." The momentary silence was broken by a child's voice. "I know how to do it." The curly-haired girl from the window seat had approached unnoticed. Her small face was serious, focused. "Sweetheart, this isn't a game," the nurse said, without stopping compressions. "My mum taught me. She cleans at the hospital." Before anyone could stop her, The girl positioned herself beside the nurse. "I can take over when you get tired." The nurse looked at her, surprised, but continued. 30 compressions, then 2 breaths. The defibrillator was still having issues. The pilot announced they were attempting an emergency landing, but were still at least 20 minutes from the nearest airport. When the nurse began to lose strength, the girl took over. "Remember, hard in the middle of the chest," the nurse instructed. Her small hands positioned correctly. Her face showed a fierce concentration that seemed out of place in someone so young. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted in a low but clear voice. The compressions were surprisingly strong and rhythmic. Her curls bounced with the movement, but her eyes never left Elliot's pale face. On the threshold between consciousness and void, Elliot vaguely noticed the change. The smaller hands, the child's voice counting. Something in that moment imprinted itself on his memory, even on the verge of death. A girl who barely knew his name was fighting to keep his heart beating. After almost a minute, the nurse returned. "Great job. Let me continue now." The girl stepped back only a pace, observing intently. "The defibrillator is ready," a flight attendant announced, bringing the equipment. "Stand clear, everyone." The nurse placed the pads on Elliot's chest. Shocking. Elliot's body arched with the impact of the electrical discharge. The nurse checked his pulse. Nothing yet. Continuing compressions. The nurse and the girl now took turns, while the defibrillator recharged for a second attempt. In the narrow aisle, a 10-year-old child fought for a stranger's life with a quiet determination that brought tears to the eyes of several passengers. "Stand clear, second shock." Again, Elliot's body jolted. The nurse checked his carotid pulse. "We have a pulse. Weak, but we have one." A collective gasp swept through the cabin. Some passengers applauded, others openly wept. The girl remained silent, looking at Elliot's face, which slowly regained some color. His eyes opened, unfocused and confused. "He's back," the nurse announced. "Sarah, can you hear me?" Elliot blinked several times, trying to understand where he was. The pain was still there, but less intense. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. "Don't try to speak now," the nurse advised. "We're making an emergency landing. Hold on tight." His eyes searched around, confused, until they found the girl who was still watching him. Something in her expression, a mix of seriousness and compassion beyond her years, struck him deeply. "You helped?" Elliot managed to whisper. The girl simply nodded once, without smiling. During the next few minutes, as the plane prepared for the emergency landing, Elliot drifted between consciousness and semi-consciousness. Each time he opened his eyes, he met the watchful gaze of the girl, who had sat on the floor beside him. "What's your name?" he managed to ask, his voice almost inaudible. "Aubrey," she replied. "Thank you, Aubrey." It was nothing. Elliot tried to smile. "Can I thank you? A gift?" She studied him for a moment. Then, with a seriousness that seemed to belong to someone much older, she replied, "My brother's sick." "Your brother?" "Noah. He's 5. He's always sick. Mom works hard, but the medicine is expensive." Even in the haze of pain and confusion, Elliot felt something change within him. This child wasn't asking for anything for herself. No mention of toys or presents. "I want to help," he murmured. "Really?" Her eyes showed a spark of hope. "I promise." Aubrey nodded, as if sealing an important agreement. She took her sketchbook from the seat and tore out a page. With a pen she took from her dress pocket, she wrote an address in large and careful letters. "Here," she said, folding the paper and placing it in his hand. "Apartment 4B. Elliot closed his fingers around the paper. "I'll help on your brother." At that moment, the plane touched down with a jolt. Paramedics were already waiting on the tarmac. Within minutes, the aircraft door opened and the emergency team quickly entered. As the paramedics prepared Elliot for transport, he saw a woman in a cleaning uniform enter the plane, anxiously searching among the passengers. "Aubrey!" she called, relief visible on her face when she saw her daughter. "Mom," Aubrey replied calmly. "I helped him." The woman noticed Elliot on the stretcher and approached hesitantly. "My daughter." "She saved my life," Elliot completed, his voice still weak. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She's always been like that, always looking out for others. "Sir, we need to take you now," one of the paramedics insisted. "One moment," Elliot requested. He looked at Aubrey and her mother. "I'll visit you. I promise." "It's not necessary," the mother began, but Elliot interrupted her with a weak gesture. "Please, I want to help. Your son." The woman seemed surprised. "Aubrey? What did you say?" "Just the truth, Mom." The paramedics began to move the stretcher. Elliot clutched the paper with the address. "I'll visit soon," he assured them. Aubrey nodded solemnly. "Good luck." The hospital was a blur of white lights, hushed voices and beeping machines. Elliot went through tests, medications, and medical explanations he barely processed. All he could think about was the small, curly-haired figure with hands too strong for her age, quietly counting as she kept his heart beating. "You were very lucky, Mr. Graves," the cardiologist explained a few hours later. "A blocked coronary artery. If you hadn't received immediate CPR, you probably wouldn't be here." Elliot nodded, distracted. "The nurse on board did an excellent job, from what I heard," the doctor continued. "It was a girl," Elliot corrected. "A child saved me." The doctor looked surprised, but smiled. "Well, then you owe her a big thank you." For the next 2 days, as he recovered in the hospital, Elliot couldn't stop thinking about Aubrey and her sick brother. The paper with the address was tucked into the envelope with his personal belongings. He pulled it out several times a day, looking at the girl's careful handwriting. His phone rang constantly. His business partner, clients, the board of directors. The meeting in New York had been handled by his VP via video conference. The contract was signed. Life went on, but something had changed. On the afternoon of the second day, Elliot was discharged with strict instructions, medication, and lifestyle change recommendations. His driver waited at the hospital entrance. "Home, sir?" the man asked, opening the car door. Elliot nodded, distracted, the paper with Aubrey's address between his fingers. He carefully put it in his wallet. During the drive, his phone didn't stop ringing. His partner, clients, the board of directors, everyone wanted assurances that the corporate machine would continue running smoothly, as if he hadn't just faced death. "I need you in New York tomorrow," Marcus, his partner, insisted when Elliot finally answered. "Investors are nervous after your incident." Elliot looked out the window, watching the city pass by. The gleaming skyscrapers, the bustling streets, life moving at its frantic pace. His world, until 2 days ago. "I won't be in New York tomorrow," he replied, surprising himself. "What, Elliot? This is crucial for—" "I nearly died the day before yesterday, Marcus." Elliot's voice was calm, almost distant. "The board can wait, but you're better now, aren't you?" The doctor said, "I have something important to do first. More important than the company we've built over the last 15 years. The disbelief in Marcus's voice was palpable. Elliot touched the pocket where he'd put Aubrey's address. "Yes." He hung up before his partner could argue. The car pulled up in front of the luxurious building where Elliot lived. The penthouse with a view of Central Park, decorated by a famous designer, had always been his refuge and his pride. Now, as he entered the spacious, silent space, he felt strangely out of place. He went straight to his office. On the impeccably organized desk, he opened his laptop and began to type. First, an email to his lawyer. Then, an internet search. Best pediatric specialists in New York City. While waiting for the results, he took his wallet from his pocket and pulled out the paper with Aubrey's address. He looked at it for a long time, thinking of the serious girl with small hands who had kept his heart beating. A 10-year-old child who, when offered any gift, asked for help not for herself, but for her sick brother. Elliot picked up the phone. "Dr. Phillips, Elliot Graves, I need a referral for the best pediatric specialist you know, and I want an appointment for tomorrow." As he spoke, he felt something strange in his chest, not the physical pain of the previous days, but something different. A sense of purpose, of a debt to be paid, and something more he couldn't yet name. He looked again at the address, apartment 4B in a neighborhood he only knew from negative news references, a world completely different from his own. "I'll go there tomorrow," he murmured to himself, tracing Aubrey's careful letters with his finger. "I'll help your brother." For the first time in years, Elliot felt connected to something larger than his own ambition. Something within him was beginning to change. The morning was cool when Elliot asked his driver to stop in front of the address he had guarded like a treasure for the past few days. James, who had served him for over 8 years, couldn't hide his surprise at where they were. "Sir, are you sure this is it?" Elliot rechecked the paper with Aubrey's careful handwriting. "Apartment 4B. He looked out the window of the luxurious car, an element clearly out of place on that narrow street with old, worn buildings. The one with the rusty fire escape and bars on the ground floor windows must be the spot. "Yes, James, this is it." "Should I wait, sir?" "Yes. And please be discreet." Elliot got out of the car, instinctively adjusting his expensive suit. He had considered wearing something more casual, but realized he didn't own anything that could be truly classified as informal in his wardrobe. He carried a leather briefcase and a discreet bag from the pharmacy. The building's lobby was dimly lit and smelled of a mix of cheap cleaning products and cooking. The walls, once white, now had a yellowish tint from age. Paint peeled in several places, revealing earlier layers. But Elliot noticed, with some surprise, that the floor was impeccably clean. There was no elevator. 4 flights of stairs that, in his penthouse, would be ascended in seconds in an elevator with ambient music. Here, each step was a reminder of the differences between their worlds. On the 4th floor, he paused to catch his breath. His body was still recovering from the recent heart attack. He looked at the door in front of him, a simple wooden door with the numbers 4B hand-painted, not a plaque. Elliot took a deep breath and knocked 3 times. There was a brief silence, followed by light footsteps approaching. The door opened just a crack, held by a security chain. Dark, cautious eyes observed him, the same serious eyes that had studied him as his heart stopped beating 30,000 feet up. "Aubrey," Elliot said, trying to offer a reassuring smile. The door closed momentarily, the chain was removed, and then it opened fully. Aubrey stood there, wearing denim shorts and a faded red t-shirt. Her curly hair was tied back in a messy ponytail. "You actually came," she said, without seeming particularly surprised. "I promised." A small smile, fleeting as a lightning flash, illuminated her face for an instant. "My mum's in the room with my brother," she explained, opening the door wider. "He's not doing too well today." Elliot stepped into a small entryway that led directly into a modest living room. The apartment was tiny by his standards, probably the size of his master closet. The walls desperately needed a fresh coat of paint, and the furniture was simple, some visibly second-hand. But there was something else there, impeccable cleanliness on every surface. Small touches of care everywhere, a plant on the windowsill, photographs in simple frames on the wall, a vase with wildflowers on the coffee table, dignity. "Aubrey, who was at the door?" A female voice came from one of the bedrooms. "It's the man from the plane, Mom. He came to see Noah." A woman appeared in the narrow hallway, her face showing surprise and a certain apprehension. Rachel Wilson looked younger than Elliot expected, perhaps in her early 30s, but with a weariness in her eyes that aged her. Her curly hair, like her daughter's, was tied in a messy bun. She wore simple jeans and a blue blouse. "Mr. Graves," she said, wiping her hands on a cloth she carried. "Aubrey told me you might come, but we didn't expect so soon. Please, call me Elliot," he replied, extending his hand. Hers was small but strong, with visible calluses, hands that knew hard work. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all." She made a vague gesture towards the living room. "Please, sit down. Can I offer you some coffee?" "No need, thank you." Elliot hesitated, then continued. "Aubrey mentioned your son isn't well." Rachel's face subtly changed, a shadow of concern crossing her features. "Yes, Noah has chronic respiratory problems. He's having a rough day." "May I see him?" Elliot asked gently. Rachel exchanged a glance with Aubrey, who nodded imperceptibly. "Of course," she replied, though her voice betrayed hesitation. "This way." She led them down the narrow hallway to a small bedroom. There was only space for 2 single beds and a dresser. On one of the beds, and under a thin blanket despite the day's warmth, lay a small boy. His dark, curly hair, like his sister's, was plastered to his sweaty forehead. Even from a distance, Elliot could hear his difficult, wheezing breath. "Noah," Rachel called softly. "We have a visitor." The boy opened his eyes, the same expressive eyes as his sister, now blurred by fever. He tried to smile, but the effort seemed exhaustive. "Hi," he whispered. Elliot felt a lump in his throat. There was something profoundly wrong with this scene, a 5-year-old confined to a bed, when he should be running and playing. "Hello, Noah," he said, approaching cautiously. "I'm your sister's friend." "He's the man I helped on the plane," Aubrey explained to her brother. "Remember I told you?" Noah nodded weakly. His heart stopped. "That's right. And your sister made it start beating again." Elliot sat on the edge of the bed, observing the boy with clinical eyes, his labored breathing, the fever patches on his cheeks, his slightly bluish lips. "How long has he been like this?" "The fever came back yesterday," Rachel replied, adjusting Noah's blanket. "But it's been getting worse for a few days. Does he have a diagnosis?" "Congenital heart defect," Rachel answered, her voice controlled but with a subtle tremor. "He was born with a heart defect. He needs surgery to correct it. But, She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The cost of such a procedure would be astronomical, especially without adequate health insurance. "Do you have a doctor who follows his case?" Elliot asked. "Yes, at the community clinic. But Noah would need to be treated by a specialist at a better-equipped hospital." Elliot looked at the boy again. His breathing seemed increasingly labored. A knot of concern formed in his stomach. "Rachel," he said calmly but firmly, "I think Noah needs to go to the hospital now." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'm saving up money to take him to the emergency room tonight." "You don't need to worry about that." Elliot picked up his phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." "An ambulance?" Panic crossed her face. "I can't afford an ambulance." "Please," Elliot said gently, "let me help. Your daughter saved my life." Rachel looked at Aubrey, who remained by her brother's bed, holding his hand. Something in the girl's posture, the same quiet determination Elliot had seen on the plane, seemed to make her mother reconsider. "All right," she finally said. As Elliot made the call, Aubrey leaned closer to her brother. "It's going to be okay, Noah. You're going to a real hospital now." The boy just nodded weakly, his chest rising and falling with visible effort. In less than 20 minutes, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics were efficient and professional, checking Noah's vitals and preparing him for transport. One of them cast a worried glance at Elliot. "We should have come sooner," he said quietly. "His saturation is dangerously low." Elliot nodded, a sense of urgency growing within him. "Which hospital are you taking him to?" "County Memorial," the paramedic replied. "No," Elliot interjected. "Take him to St. Luke's." The man looked confused. "Sir, protocol says—" "I'll cover all costs," Elliot interrupted, handing over his business card. "And please call Dr. Harrison Kensington. Tell him Elliot Graves is sending a patient who needs immediate attention." The paramedic looked at the card, his eyes widening slightly as he recognized the name, and nodded. "Yes, sir." Rachel, who had rushed to gather some clothes for Noah, returned to the room in time to hear the conversation. Her face showed a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "St. Luke's?" she asked, her voice low. "Elliot, I can't—" "Don't worry about that now," he gently interrupted her. "Noah is the priority. We'll follow the ambulance in my car." During the ride to the hospital, the silence in the car was heavy. Rachel sat rigidly in the back seat, her eyes fixed on the ambulance ahead, her hands twisting the strap of the small bag she had brought. Aubrey, beside her, maintained a serious but composed expression. "He'll be fine," Elliot said, trying to reassure them. "Doctor, Matthews is the best pediatric cardiologist in the city." Rachel just nodded, but didn't seem entirely convinced. Elliot wondered how many times promises had been broken to her. At the hospital, the efficiency of Elliot's name opened all doors. Noah was immediately taken to an emergency room, with Dr. Matthews already waiting. Rachel was allowed to accompany him, while Elliot and Aubrey waited in the waiting room. "Thank you," Aubrey said softly, sitting beside him on the uncomfortable armchair, "for helping Noah. You don't have to thank me. You didn't have to do this." She studied him with those eyes too serious for her age. "You're rich, aren't you?" The direct question caught Elliot off guard. "Yes, I have comfortable resources." Aubrey nodded, as if confirming something she already knew. "Noah has needed this surgery for a long time, but it's too expensive." She paused. "Are you going to help with that too?" There was a disconcerting frankness in the question. It wasn't greed or opportunism, just a child pragmatically looking at the situation. "Yes, Aubrey, I'll help with everything Noah needs." She studied him for another moment, then nodded again, seemingly satisfied. "That's good. He deserves to get better." They remained silent for a few minutes, until Elliot noticed something. "Aubrey, today is Tuesday. Why aren't you at school?" The girl looked away, suddenly appearing uncomfortable. "I haven't been going to school much lately." "Why?" She shrugged, a gesture that tried to seem casual, but couldn't hide the weight behind it. "I stopped after Dad left. Mom needed me, and it just didn't work anymore." The simplicity of the statement hit Elliot like a punch. A 10-year-old child talking about dropping out of school as if it were a logical and necessary decision. No self-pity, no drama. "Noah got sick a lot," Aubrey continued. "Mom had to work. Someone needed to take care of him." "And that someone was you," she nodded. "It's not so bad, I read a lot. And Noah's teacher lends me lesson books when she can." Elliot tried to process what he was hearing. The girl who had saved his life, who had the presence of mind and skill to perform CPR correctly 30,000 feet up, had given up her own childhood to care for her sick brother. "Don't you miss school, your friends?" Aubrey considered the question for a moment. "Sometimes, but Mom and Noah need me more." At that moment, Rachel appeared at the waiting room door, looking exhausted but slightly relieved. "Noah is stabilized," she informed. "They're transferring him to pediatric ICU. Dr. Matthews wants to do more tests." "Can I see him?" Aubrey asked immediately. "Soon, dear. They're just finishing getting him settled." Elliot stood up. "Rachel, can I speak with you for a moment?" They moved a few steps away, while Aubrey idly flipped through an old magazine. "What exactly did the doctor say?" Elliot asked in a low voice. Rachel sighed. "Noah's condition is serious. He has a complex congenital heart defect. His heart didn't form correctly." She hesitated. "Dr. Matthews said he'll need to stay admitted for a few days to stabilize, and then schedule the surgery." Her voice wavered. "He mentioned you, offered to cover the costs." "Yes." "Why?" Rachel asked, looking directly at him. "You barely know us." Elliot thought for a moment, searching for the right answer. "Your daughter didn't hesitate when she saw someone needing help. Even as a child, even as a stranger. She just acted." Rachel looked at Aubrey, and her face softened. "She's always been like that. Strong beyond her years." "She told me she doesn't go to school." Rachel's body tensed. "I had no choice," she said defensively. "I couldn't afford a babysitter for Noah, and he was too sick for daycare. I tried every option, believe me." "I'm not judging you," Elliot assured her. "I'm just trying to understand." Rachel relaxed slightly. "After my ex-husband left us, everything fell apart. I lost health insurance and had to take a second job." She looked at her own hands. "Aubrey offered to take care of Noah, said she could study at home. It was supposed to be temporary, but it became the new normal," Elliot completed. "Yes." A single tear escaped, which Rachel quickly wiped away. "She saved our family, just like she saved you." Elliot looked again at Aubrey, sitting patiently with the magazine in her lap, her eyes occasionally turning towards the door where her brother had disappeared. A child who carried the weight of the world on her small shoulders without complaint. Something inside him solidified, a resolve as strong as any business decision he had ever made. "Rachel," he said, "I want to help, not just with Noah's surgery, but with everything. School for Aubrey, a better job for you, whatever is necessary." She looked at him with suspicion. "Why? What do you get out of this?" It was a fair question. Elliot looked around the sterile hospital, with its white walls and impersonal efficiency. Then he remembered the small apartment he had just visited. with its peeling but clean walls, its worn but cared-for furniture, the family photos, the flowers on the table. "Have you ever been to my home, Rachel?" She seemed confused by the change of subject. "No, of course not. It's a 4,000-square-foot penthouse, magazine-worthy decor, panoramic views, original artwork." He paused. "And completely empty. No photos on the walls, no flowers on the table, no connection." Rachel studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decipher a complex puzzle. "I don't want your charity," she finally said. "It's not charity," Elliot replied. "It's gratitude, and maybe a little selfishness too." Before she could answer, a nurse appeared at the door. "Noah Wilson's family? He's awake and asking for his sister." Aubrey immediately stood up, looking at her mother for permission. Rachel nodded, and the girl followed the nurse down the hallway. "Think about what I said," Elliot said softly. "Not for me, but for them." Rachel didn't reply, but something in her gaze had changed. As they walked together to the pediatric ICU where Noah was, Elliot felt a certainty growing within him. The girl who had saved his life had, unknowingly, offered him something even more valuable, a purpose. And he wouldn't waste this second chance. The pediatric ICU at St. Luke's was a place of contrasts. Colorful walls and cheerful murals tried to soften the reality of medical equipment, constant beeps, and lights that never fully dimmed. Rachel now knew every inch of that space. After 2 weeks, the reclining chair beside Noah's bed had become her second home. Ms. Wilson. Nurse Diane, already familiar after so many shifts, entered the room silently. "I brought you some tea." Rachel accepted the disposable cup with a tired smile. "Thank you. How is he today?" "He slept well through the night. The fever hasn't returned." Rachel looked at her sleeping son, connected to monitors and tubes. Even so, his cheeks were less pale today, a small sign of improvement she clung to with all her might. The nurse checked his vitals and wrote something on the chart. "Dr. Matthews will be on his morning rounds. Maybe he'll have news about the surgery." Rachel simply nodded. For 2 weeks, since Noah was admitted, her life had been reduced to this cycle. Monitors, medication, tests, small daily victories, and the fragile hope that the next procedure would be the definitive one. After the nurse left, Rachel picked up her phone. She had 3 unread messages. The first was from her cleaning service supervisor. "Rachel, we can't hold your position any longer. I'm sorry." She closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing another blow. It wasn't unexpected, but it still hurt. The second was from Aubrey. "Good morning, Mom. Did you sleep well? I'm taking my science project today. Elliot is picking me up after school. Love you." The third, from Elliot himself. "Good morning, Rachel. I'll take Aubrey to school and pick her up later. She has everything she needs for the project. We'll stop by to see Noah in the late afternoon. Do you need anything?" Rachel reread the last message, feeling a mixture of gratitude and an unidentifiable discomfort. In the 2 weeks since Noah was admitted, Elliot Graves had become a constant presence in their lives. At first, she had resisted, pride and the natural suspicion of someone who learned the hard way that nothing comes without a price. But each day, he proved to be different. When it became clear that Rachel would need to stay at the hospital with Noah, Elliot simply took over the logistics for Aubrey. He took her to school, picked her up, helped with homework, and ensured she ate well. On the first weekend, when Rachel could briefly go home to take a proper shower and get clean clothes, she found the refrigerator stocked and the month's bills paid. There was nothing romantic or seductive about his gestures, just practical, discreet, and respectful help, as if he were paying a debt, although Rachel knew any debt had already been more than settled. "Mommy!" Noah's weak voice interrupted her thoughts. "I'm here, my love." Rachel immediately leaned over the bed, adjusting his pillow. "How do you feel?" "Hungry," he replied, and she smiled. Hunger was a good sign. "I'll order your breakfast." "How about some Jell-O?" Noah grimaced. "Again? It's all your stomach can handle for now, but if you eat it all, maybe you can convince the nurse to bring you some pudding later." As Noah ate his breakfast, Dr. Matthews made his visit. Tall and middle-aged, with graying hair and thin-rimmed glasses, he had a reassuring presence that Rachel appreciated. "Good morning, champ." he greeted Noah, before turning to Rachel. "Miss Bams Wilson, can we talk in the hallway?" Rachel's heart pounded. These hallway conversations rarely brought good news. She followed the doctor out of the room, casting a reassuring smile at Noah. "The latest tests were promising," Dr. Matthews began, consulting the tablet in his hands. "Noah's cardiac function is more stable, and the medication is controlling the arrhythmia well. I believe we can schedule the surgery for next week." Rachel exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That's great. "It will be a complex procedure," the doctor continued, "but I'm optimistic about the results. Noah is a strong boy." "And how long for recovery?" "At least 2 weeks in the hospital after surgery. Then a few months of close follow-up." Rachel nodded, processing the information. More time off work, more expenses, more separation from Aubrey. As if reading her thoughts, the doctor added, "Mr. Graves has already handled all financial matters, and he suggested you consider staying in the hospital's family accommodation after the surgery. It's in the building next door, would allow you to rest properly and still be close to Noah." "He thought of everything, didn't he?" Rachel commented, feeling that mix of gratitude and discomfort again. "He seems very committed to your well-being," the doctor observed, without judgment. "It's rare to see that kind of support." After the doctor left, Rachel returned to Noah's room, finding him entertained with a portable electronic game Elliot had brought days earlier. "What did the doctor say?" Noah asked, without taking his eyes off the screen. "That you're getting better, and that soon you'll have surgery to fix your heart." Noah put the game down, a look of concern crossing his face. "Will it hurt?" Rachel sat on the edge of the bed and took his small hand. "You'll be sleeping during the surgery. Afterward, it will hurt a little, but they have special medicine for that. And you'll stay with me the whole time. Every minute," she promised, kissing his forehead. "What about Aubrey?" "She visits you whenever she can." "And Elliot?" Rachel hesitated briefly. "Him too." Noah smiled, satisfied. "He's nice. He brought this game. And he said when I get better, we're all going to the zoo." Rachel didn't comment on this unknown promise. Again, Elliot building bonds, establishing himself in their lives as if he had always been there. The rest of the morning passed in the familiar hospital routine, nurses checking vitals, Noah alternating between naps and games, Rachel reading a worn book she had found in the waiting room. Around noon, her phone rang. "Rachel, it's Elliot." "Hello. How is Noah today?" She briefly reported the conversation with the doctor. Elliot listened carefully, asking pertinent questions about the next steps. "That's great," he said when she finished. "A big step. Listen, I'm with Aubrey now. I just picked her up from school. She'd like to show you something on video. Can I turn on the camera?" "Of course." Aubrey's image appeared on the screen, her curls disheveled and a shy smile on her face. "Hi, Mom. Look what I made in science class." She held up a small terrarium, a plastic bottle cut and transformed into a miniature ecosystem with soil, mosses, and small plants. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. The teacher said it was the best in the class. I'll bring it for you to see up close later." "I can't wait." The conversation continued for a few minutes, Aubrey talking about school with an enthusiasm Rachel hadn't seen in a long time. Since returning to regular classes, the girl seemed to be rediscovering the joy of simply being a child. "Rachel," Elliot returned to the phone after Aubrey stepped away. "There's something else I want to discuss with you. Not over the phone. When we stop by later, can we talk?" "Yes, of course." She tried to interpret his tone, but couldn't. "Did something happen with Aubrey?" No, she's great. It's something else. See you at 5. After hanging up, Rachel pondered. What else did Elliot Graves want to offer, or ask for? Experience had taught her that no one gave so much without expecting something in return. The hours dragged on. Noah slept most of the afternoon, exhausted after the morning's battery of tests. Rachel took the opportunity to shower in the small bathroom adjoining the room and change clothes, small luxuries that became significant after days in a hospital chair. At 5 o'clock sharp, she heard the familiar voices in the hallway. Aubrey entered first, carefully carrying the terrarium, followed by Elliot, who carried a paper bag. "Mom." Aubrey placed the terrarium on the table beside the bed and hugged Rachel. "I brought your favorite sandwich. And for Noah, grape jello. He'll love it when he wakes up." Rachel smiled, returning the hug. She missed these moments, the smell of her daughter's hair, the solidness of her small body against hers. "How was your day?" she asked, as they unwrapped the sandwiches. Aubrey began animatedly narrating her school adventures. Rachel watched, amazed by the transformation. The girl who weeks ago carried the weight of the world on her small shoulders now gesticulated energetically while talking about a science experiment. "And then the teacher said my drawing was very detailed and that I should consider art classes." "That's wonderful, dear. Elliot said I can take classes after school if I want." Rachel cast a quick glance at the man who remained discreetly near the door. He shrugged as if to say, "Just an idea." "We'll think about that when Noah is better," Rachel replied diplomatically. Aubrey nodded, accepting the answer, and went to her brother's bed. "Can I wake him up? I want to show him my terrarium." "Let him rest a little longer," Rachel suggested. "Osa, why don't you show Elliot that sticker vending machine you liked?" It was a transparent excuse to be alone with Elliot, but Aubrey didn't seem to notice. "Okay, let's go, Elliot." As soon as they left, Rachel allowed herself a moment of weakness, sinking into the chair. The tiredness of the past few days weighed on every muscle. When Elliot returned minutes later, she had already recomposed her posture. He carried 2 coffees. "I thought you might need one," he said, offering a cup. "Thank you." She accepted, grateful for the warmth and caffeine. "Where's Aubrey?" "Talking to one of the nurses about how the heart monitor works. She has endless curiosity about everything." Rachel smiled. "She's always been like that, since she was little." A comfortable silence settled between them. Rachel noticed how Elliot seemed different from the impeccably dressed man she had met weeks ago. He wore jeans and a simple shirt now, and there was something more relaxed in his posture. "You wanted to talk about something?" she asked finally. Elliot nodded, sitting in the chair beside her. "Rachel, I know your work situation is complicated." She tensed. "How do you know that?" "You mentioned they couldn't hold your position for long, and today, when I called to inform them you'd still be out, your supervisor made it clear your job no longer exists." Rachel felt her face burn. It was humiliating to have her life exposed like this. "Rachel," Elliot continued, his voice soft, "I want to offer you a job at my company." She stared at him, surprised. "A job? Doing what?" "I'm a cleaner, Elliot. I don't have the qualifications for administrative assistant in the corporate social services department. It's a new sector we're developing. I have no experience with that. You have all the qualifications that matter. You're organized, reliable, hardworking. The rest can be learned." Rachel studied him, trying to understand his motivations. "Why are you doing all this? You already funded Noah's treatment, helped Aubrey go back to school, and now this." Elliot looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully, before answering. "I have everything," he finally said. "A successful company, money, properties, but I have no one to share any of it with." The simplicity of the confession caught her off guard. "Santa, I'm not asking for anything in return, Rachel," he continued, as if reading her thoughts. "There are no romantic expectations or anything like that. It's just that—" He paused, searching for words. "Your daughter gave me a second chance at life, literally, and meeting you all showed me that I've been living in a hollow way." Rachel felt something soften within her, a resistance she had been holding on to since day one. "You didn't give up, did you?" she observed. "On Noah, on Aubrey, on trying to help." "Neither did you," Elliot replied. "I saw how you stayed strong for them, even when everything seemed impossible." Rachel didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at her sleeping son, at the monitors that recorded the beats of his small, imperfect heart. "I accept the job," she finally said, "but on one condition, which is that it be a real job, with real responsibilities. I don't want disguised charity." Elliot smiled, extending his hand. "Agreed. And I'll warn you now, I'm a demanding boss." She accepted his handshake, feeling for the first time in years that there was room to breathe. Aubrey returned at that moment, excited by her newfound knowledge of heart monitors. "Mom, did you know the beeps change depending on how the heart beats?" "Nurse Diane showed me. Fascinating, dear. And I told her I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up, or maybe a scientist, or both." Rachel smiled, watching her daughter. For so long, Aubrey had suffocated her dreams, taking on responsibilities that weren't hers. Seeing her dream again was like witnessing a silent miracle. That night, after Elliot took Aubrey home, Rachel remained by Noah's bedside, holding his hand while he slept. Her conversation with Elliot replayed in her mind. "You didn't give up," he had said. And it was true. Despite everything, her ex-husband's abandonment, financial difficulties, Noah's illness, she had never considered giving up. Perhaps it was time to allow someone to help her carry the weight, not out of weakness, but out of a conscious choice. For Noah, for Aubrey, and, for the first time in a long time, for herself too. Looking at her sleeping son, Rachel made a silent promise. She would never give up, but she would also learn to accept help when offered without ulterior motives. For the first time in weeks, she fell asleep without the crushing weight of worry, lulled by the constant sound of the monitors and the promise of a slightly less lonely tomorrow. The soft evening light streamed through the windows of Rachel's apartment, casting golden shadows on the freshly painted walls. On the kitchen table, empty plates still held traces of the shared dinner. The sound of laughter came from the living room, where Noah was showing off his new board game. "No fair, you're cheating," Aubrey accused, laughing as her brother moved his piece 2 spaces beyond what was allowed. "I am not," Noah protested, but his mischievous grin gave him away. "Yes, you are, champ." "I saw you skip that space," Elliot commented, ruffling the boy's hair. "You're all against me." Noah feigned indignation, but his eyes sparkled with joy. From the kitchen doorway, Rachel watched the scene, holding a cup of tea. 3 months had passed since Noah's surgery. 3 months of gradual recovery, of small milestones celebrated, of a normalcy that once seemed impossible. The scar on the boy's chest, now a pink line under his t-shirt, was the only visible reminder of those days of anguish. The Noah who now ran, played out, and occasionally cheated at board games seemed like a completely different child from the one who had spent weeks in a hospital bed. "Does anyone else want dessert?" Rachel asked, entering the living room. "Me!" Noah immediately raised his hand. "Only if you promise to play fair," Elliot conditioned, winking at Aubrey. Noah sighed dramatically. "Okay, I promise." As Rachel served the apple pie they had baked together earlier, Elliot leaned back on the sofa, observing the scene with a sense of fulfillment that still surprised him. At some point in the last few months, these Friday nights had become sacred in his schedule. Dinners at Rachel's house, games with the kids, simple conversations about daily life. For someone who once lived between business meetings and formal client dinners, the simplicity of these moments was revolutionary, and it healed something within him that he hadn't even known was broken. "Elliot, do you want it with or without ice cream?" Aubrey asked, holding the serving spoon. "With, please. Plenty." "You're lucky you don't have heart problems," Noah casually commented, pointing to his own scar. "Otherwise, you couldn't eat so much ice cream." A brief silence followed the innocent comment. Elliot and Rachel exchanged a quick glance. Only they knew about Elliot's recently diagnosed heart condition, a secret they had decided to keep from the children for now. "Even with a healthy heart, you shouldn't eat so much sweets." Rachel broke the moment, ruffling Elliot's hair as she did with her children. "You're setting a bad example," Elliot smiled, grateful for the intervention. "True, maybe just half a scoop of ice cream, then." The evening continued with the board game, now with Noah mostly playing honestly. When the game ended, with Aubrey declared the winner, Noah was already yawning. "Time for bed, young man," Rachel announced, seeing her son's heavy eyes. "Sorry, but I'm not sleepy," he protested automatically, contradicted by another yawn. "Of course not," Elliot teased. "It's just your body getting tired from all that growing." Noah considered the explanation. "Makes sense. I'm taller than last week." "You certainly are," Elliot solemnly agreed. "Soon you'll be taller than all of us." Rachel took Noah to brush his teeth and get ready for bed. Aubrey began to collect the game pieces, methodically organizing them in the box. "Are you coming tomorrow too?" she asked Elliot, without looking up. "Not tomorrow. I have a meeting in the morning, but we can do something on Sunday if you like." She nodded, satisfied. "Can we continue the garden on your terrace?" "Of course. The seedlings we planted last week are already sprouting." A small smile illuminated Aubrey's face. She was still a girl of few words, but her smiles had become more frequent in recent months, small victories that Elliot mentally catalogued. When Rachel returned, Aubrey had already put the game away and was now showing Elliot a drawing she had made at school. "It's Noah in the hospital," she explained, pointing to the simplified figures. "And here we are visiting. See, you brought flowers." "I remember that day well," Elliot commented, admiring the drawing. "You have talent, Aubrey. My art teacher said I have a good sense of proportion." "She's absolutely right." Rachel sat on the arm of the sofa, looking at the drawing over Elliot's shoulder. "You captured your brother's stubborn expression well." "He didn't want to take his medicine," Aubrey recalled with a smile. "Now you had to promise him that remote control car, which, by the way, has been making an infernal noise ever since." Rachel sighed, but her tone was affectionate. Aubrey yawned, prompting Rachel to check the clock. "It's also time for you to go to bed, young lady. You have science class early tomorrow. Can I read for 10 more minutes?" 10 minutes. Not one more. After Aubrey said goodnight and retired to her room, a comfortable silence settled between the adults. Rachel began to clear the dessert dishes. "Let me help," Elliot offered, standing up. In the small kitchen, they worked side by side, he washing, she drying. A rhythm they had developed naturally and without need for words. "Noah is really doing well," Elliot commented, passing a clean plate to her. "It's almost hard to believe how much he's improved." "The doctor said he exceeded all expectations," Rachel agreed. "And Aubrey, have you seen how much more she's smiling? I noticed she even made a joke yesterday when we were coming home from school." "A joke? My Aubrey?" Rachel feigned shock. "Who are you and what have you done with my serious daughter?" Elliot laughed, a sound that had rarely escaped his throat before and now seemed to come easily, effortlessly. "She has a subtle sense of humor. I think she always did. She just didn't have space to show it." Rachel watched him for a moment, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You're different too, you know." "How so?" "Lighter. When we met, you seemed to carry the world on your shoulders. Now you laugh. Really laugh." Elliot reflected on the observation. It was true. For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, he felt genuinely happy. Not the momentary satisfaction of closing a deal or acquiring something new, but a sustained happiness, nourished by small moments like this. "You make me feel good," he admitted simply. Rachel finished drying the last plate and put it in the cupboard. Then, turning to him, she said something Elliot didn't expect. "You didn't buy our lives. You quietly walked into them and stayed." The simplicity and depth of the observation struck him forcefully. That was exactly it. He hadn't arrived as a savior or benefactor. He had simply entered, step by step, respecting boundaries, offering help without demanding gratitude, being present without imposing his presence. "Thank you for letting me stay," he replied, his voice slightly hoarse. Rachel smiled, briefly squeezing his arm before changing the subject, sensitive to the emotion of the moment. "Aubrey is excited about visiting your place tomorrow. She talks about nothing else but that terrace garden." "Who knew I'd become a gardener at 40? Elliot joked, grateful for the change of tone. Life has its surprises. Shortly after, Elliot said goodbye, promising to pick up Aubrey on Sunday for the visit to his apartment. As he drove back home, he reflected on Rachel's words. "You quietly walked into them and stayed." There was something profoundly true in that observation that touched the core of what he had been feeling in recent months. And Sunday dawned sunny, perfect for gardening. Elliot picked up Aubrey right after breakfast, promising Rachel he'd bring her back before dinner. "I brought the seeds you asked for," Aubrey announced as soon as she got in the car, holding up a small paper envelope. "Excellent. Sunflowers." "Yes, the sales lady said they grow well in big pots." During the drive to Elliot's apartment, Aubrey talked about the book she was reading. a story about a girl who discovered a secret garden. The coincidence was not lost on Elliot. "Maybe our terrace garden can be secret too," he suggested. "But it's not hidden, it's on top of the building." Secret doesn't mean hidden. It can be special, known only by a few people. Aubrey considered the idea. Like a club. Exactly. The Secret Garden Club. When they arrived at the apartment, Elliot observed how Aubrey now moved with familiarity through the space. On her first visits, she had been cautious, almost fearful of the opulence of the place. Now, she dropped her backpack on the hall bench and headed directly to the terrace without hesitation. The terrace, once a sterile space with minimal designer furniture, had transformed in recent months. Pots of different sizes occupied a sunny corner, with plants in various stages of growth. It was a project they had started together after Noah's recovery, a casual suggestion from Elliot that had become a shared ritual. "Look, the tomato plants have flowers," Aubrey exclaimed, running to examine the small yellow blossoms. "Soon we'll have fresh tomatoes," Elliot commented, following her. "We can take them to your mom to make sauce." They spent the morning working side by side, preparing a new pot for the sunflowers, watering existing plants, removing dead leaves. Aubrey spoke about each plant as if it were a friend, noting each new leaf or bud with enthusiasm. "You really enjoy this, don't you?" Elliot observed, seeing the concentration on her face as she delicately removed a weed. "I like to see things grow," she replied simply. "It's like magic, but real." For lunch, they made sandwiches together in Elliot's rarely used kitchen. Another change, before Aubrey came into his life, that kitchen served only to heat up pre-made meals or make coffee. "We can pick some herbs from the garden," Aubrey suggested, already heading to the terrace to get fresh basil. They ate at the kitchen counter, discussing plans to expand the garden and what vegetables they would try to grow next. Elliot realized, not for the first time, how easy it was to talk to Aubrey. Despite being only 10 years old, she possessed a maturity that made conversation fluid and meaningful. After lunch, they sat in the living room to read, another ritual they had developed. Aubrey with her book about the secret garden, Elliot with a biography that, before meeting the girl, he probably never would have had time to read. The comfortable silence was interrupted only by the occasional turning of pages. At some point, Elliot realized the sounds had ceased completely. He looked over and saw that Aubrey had fallen asleep, the book still open in her lap. Carefully, so as not to wake her, Elliot removed the book and placed it on the coffee table. Then he got a soft blanket from the cupboard and gently covered her. Aubrey didn't even stir. Her face relaxed in sleep in a way it rarely was when she was awake. Elliot sat in the armchair opposite the sofa, simply observing the sleeping girl. There was something deeply moving in the implicit trust of that moment, Aubrey feeling safe enough in his home to fall asleep without a care. "You saved me in the air," he thought, feeling a wave of emotion he didn't try to contain. "And now you save me every day with your way of being." It was true. This extraordinary child, with her quiet strength and her ability to find beauty in the simplest things, had transformed his life in ways he never could have predicted. Before her, his days were a succession of appointments, negotiations, acquisitions, constant movement without real meaning. Now there were sunflowers growing on his terrace. There was a pencil mark on the kitchen wall, at Aubrey's exact height, where they had decided to measure her growth each month. There was a shelf in the library with children's and young adult books, carefully selected for her evolving interests. Small things, details most people wouldn't even notice. But for Elliot, they were evidence of a life truly lived, not just existed. The afternoon sun advanced through the room, creating golden patterns on the floor. In his penthouse apartment, with panoramic city views, Elliot Graves, businessman, millionaire, lonely for so long, was beginning to understand the true meaning of belonging. It wasn't about owning a place, a title, or status. It was about these invisible connections formed in shared small routines. It was about knowing someone's favorite brand of cereal, or knowing exactly how they like to fold towels, or recognizing the meaning of a certain look. As he watched Aubrey sleeping peacefully under the blanket, Elliot felt a certainty grow within him. the certainty that he had found his place in the world. And it was beside this improbable family that destiny had placed in his path when his heart literally stopped beating. The small things, a shared lunch, hands stained with dirt, a child asleep on his sofa, were, after all, the ones that truly had the power to heal. The rain lashed against the windows of Elliot's penthouse with an intensity that seemed to echo the pain in his chest. He had cancelled dinner with Rachel and the children, claiming a last-minute work engagement. The truth, which he didn't want to share, was that he hadn't felt well since morning, an uncomfortable pressure in his chest that he tried to ignore, attributing it to stress or indigestion. Now, however, at 10 o'clock at night, alone in his vast apartment, the pain had intensified to the point where he could no longer deny it. Sitting on the edge of the bed, shirt partially open, Elliot felt cold sweat trickle down his back as the pain radiated down his left arm. "Not now," he murmured, recognizing the signs. "Please, not now." With trembling fingers, he reached for the phone on the bedside table. The numbers seemed to blur before his eyes. He managed to dial emergency services, the operator's voice sounding distant, as if coming through a tunnel. "Emergency. What's your problem?" "Heart attack. I think I'm having a heart attack," he managed to say, his voice weak. He recited his address mechanically. "Sir, can you open the door for the paramedics? They're on their way." Elliot murmured an affirmation, then hung up. With superhuman effort, he dragged himself down the hallway to the entrance. Each step was a battle against the pain that now felt like a clenched fist crushing his chest. He reached the door, unlocked it, and then his legs gave out. He slid to the floor, his back resting against the wall. Fragmented thoughts crossed his confused mind. Rachel, Aubrey, Noah, the garden on the terrace, the sunflower seeds that hadn't sprouted yet, Aubrey's school play next week, for which he had promised to be in the front row. "I'm not finished yet," he whispered to the empty apartment as darkness began to engulf him. To white lights, rhythmic beeps, the unmistakable smell of hospital. Elliot blinked several times, consciousness slowly returning. He wasn't in his apartment, he was alive. A nurse noticed he had woken up and approached. "Welcome back, Mr. Graves. I'll call the doctor." Minutes later, a middle-aged man in a white coat entered the room consulting a tablet. "Mr. Graves, I'm Dr. Patterson, cardiologist. You were lucky. The emergency team arrived quickly." "What happened?" Elliot asked him, his voice hoarse. "A significant cardiac episode. Not exactly like the first one you had on the plane, but related." The doctor pulled up a chair, sitting beside the bed. "Mr. Graves, we've run several tests while you were unconscious, and we need to talk about a more serious condition." The words that followed fell upon Elliot like stones. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a chronic condition, abnormal thickening of the heart walls, risk of potentially fatal arrhythmias, need for constant monitoring and continuous medication. "This condition is what caused my first attack," Elliot asked when the doctor paused. "It was likely a contributing factor, yes. It's a condition that often remains undiagnosed until a serious event occurs." The doctor adjusted his glasses. "We'll need an aggressive treatment plan, medications, regular monitoring, possible procedures in the future. And, of course, significant lifestyle changes." Elliot nodded, absorbing the information with a calm that surprised himself. Perhaps because, on some level, he had already suspected. The small episodes of shortness of breath, the occasional fatigue he attributed to age, the palpitations he dismissed as stress. "Is there anyone we can call for you?" the doctor asked, standing up. "Family, friends?" The question hit him unexpectedly. 6 months ago, the answer would have been no. Now, "Yes," he replied, surprised by the certainty in his voice. "Rachel Wilson. I have her number in my cell phone contacts." After the doctor left, Elliot was left alone with his thoughts and the monotonous sound of the monitors. The reality of the situation began to sink in. It wasn't just an isolated episode. It was a condition that would accompany him for the rest of his life, a life that could be shorter than he imagined. Strangely, what disturbed him most wasn't the fear of death itself. It was the feeling of incompleteness, of all his years of hard work, Accumulating fortune and status, what would truly remain? Buildings with his name on them, bank accounts, shares in companies that would eventually forget who he was. The room door opened, interrupting his somber thoughts. His personal assistant, Marcus, entered with a worried expression. "Mr. Graves, I came as soon as I heard. Is there anything I can do?" "Yes, Marcus. Contact Arthur Mendez, my lawyer. Tell him I need to see him today, here at the hospital. It's urgent." "Certainly, sir. Anything else?" Elliot hesitated. "Did Rachel Wilson call?" "Not that I know of, sir." "Should I try to contact her again?" "It's not necessary. She'll come when she can." The certainty in that statement surprised his assistant, but he merely nodded before leaving. Elliot closed his eyes, feeling exhaustion weigh on every cell of his body. But his mind remained active, reorganizing priorities, making decisions. Arthur Mendez arrived in the late afternoon, his familiar leather briefcase under his arm. The middle-aged lawyer had known Elliot for over 15 years and was one of the few who treated him with absolute frankness. "You look terrible," was his greeting upon entering the room. "Thanks for the honesty," Elliot replied with a weak smile. "What happened?" "Heart problem. Chronic. Apparently, I've been living with a ticking time bomb in my chest without knowing it." Arthur nodded gravely, placing the briefcase on the table beside the bed. "I'm sorry, Elliot. What can I do?" "I need to revise my will, completely." "I understand. Any specific directives?" Elliot took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. "I want to leave everything to Aubrey Wilson." The lawyer raised his eyebrows, his only display of surprise. "The girl you mentioned, the one who performed CPR on you on the plane?" "Yes." "Everything? The companies, the properties, the shares, the accounts, everything. With the proper protections, of course. A structured trust fund, released in stages." "She's a minor." Arthur made quick notes on his pad. "And what about the mother, Rachel, correct?" "A separate fund for her, substantial, and one for the brother, Noah. But the bulk of the estate goes to Aubrey, with Rachel as administrator until she comes of age." "Any other provisions? Donations to charities, other beneficiaries?" Elliot considered for a moment. "Yes, maintain the annual donations to the foundations we already support, and I want to establish a new one, focused on pediatric cardiovascular research." For the next hour, they refined the details. Arthur asked pertinent questions, took notes, occasionally offered suggestions. When he finally put away his pad, he looked at Elliot with a contemplative expression. "And this is quite a change from your last will. Before and everything went to your distant cousins and a few institutions, people I barely know. And this family, do you really know them?" Elliot looked out the hospital window, at the sky beginning to darken. "Better than anyone else." Arthur nodded, accepting the answer. "I'll prepare the documents. I can bring them tomorrow for signature." "Thank you, Arthur." When the lawyer left, Elliot felt a strange peace settle in. It was as if, by deciding his legacy, he had resolved a fundamental question that had bothered him his entire adult life. Night fell. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting medications. Elliot dozed intermittently, waking at every sound, every off-rhythm beep. It was during one of these moments of semi-consciousness that he heard the door open softly. He opened his eyes, expecting to see another nurse, but instead found a pair of dark, serious eyes he knew well. "Aubrey," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. She approached the bed cautiously, as if fearing any sudden movement might harm him. She wore pajamas under her coat, her curly hair in a messy ponytail. She had clearly come in a hurry. "Hi," she said simply. "How did you know I was here?" "The hospital called Mom. She's talking to the doctor." Elliot tried to sit up a little more, but the pain made him recoil. "Shouldn't you be in bed? It's late." "I couldn't sleep knowing you're here." The simplicity of the answer touched him deeply. "I'm sorry for the scare," he said. "This time, you weren't there to save me." Aubrey moved closer, hesitated for a moment, and then took his hand, her small, warm fingers against his, cold and pale. "But I can stay," she replied, her gaze direct and confident. In that moment, something within Elliot, something beyond his physically damaged heart, seemed to heal a little. The certainty in her voice, the firmness in her touch, the determination in her gaze. She was no longer just the child he helped, but someone offering strength when he needed it most. "Thank you," he whispered, gently squeezing her fingers. The door opened again and Rachel entered, her face etched with worry. Seeing Aubrey holding Elliot's hand, she paused for a moment, taking in the scene. "The doctor explained what happened," she said, approaching the other side of the bed. "Why didn't you tell us you weren't feeling well?" There was no accusation in her voice, only genuine concern. "I didn't want to worry you," Elliot answered honestly. "You've already had enough with Noah." Rachel shook her head, her gaze softening. "It doesn't work like that, Elliot. We're not a charity project, we're family." The word hung in the air between them, spoken not with hesitation, but with a quiet certainty Elliot never expected to hear. "The doctor said you're going to need care," Rachel continued. "You can't be alone while you recover. I'll be fine, I can hire nurses." "You can come to our house," Aubrey interrupted, still holding his hand. "We have the sofa bed in the living room, and I can help take care of you like you did with Noah." Rachel nodded, confirming her daughter's suggestion. It's a better idea than being alone in that huge apartment. Elliot felt something warm and unfamiliar expand in his chest, not physical pain fashion, but an emotion he could barely name. The idea of being cared for, of being considered important enough for them to worry, was almost overwhelming. "I don't want to be a burden," he finally said. "You've never been a burden to us," Rachel replied, her voice firm. "Never." The three of them fell silent then, each absorbing the moment in their own way. It wasn't an uncomfortable or empty silence, but a full one, of shared concern, of relief at being together, of a mutual understanding that transcended words. That silence said everything that needed to be said. Aubrey continued holding his hand, occasionally adjusting the IV tube to ensure it wasn't kinked. Rachel sat in the chair beside the bed, her presence a reassuring anchor. "I should take Aubrey home," she said eventually, noticing her daughter's heavy eyes. "It's past midnight." "Just a little longer," Aubrey pleaded, still holding Elliot's hand. "It's okay," he assured her. "I'll be here tomorrow and after. I promise." It was a promise he didn't know if he could keep given his condition, but in that moment, he felt determined to do his best to uphold it. "Rest," Rachel instructed, standing up. "We'll be back in the morning." Aubrey finally released his hand, but not before giving it one last squeeze, as if sealing a silent agreement between them. "Good night, Elliot," she said, her voice soft. "Tomorrow I'll bring Jade to keep you company." The mention of the small succulent they had grown together brought a genuine smile to Elliot's tired face. "She'll like the window light." After they left, Elliot remained awake for a long time, staring at the hospital ceiling. The pain in his chest had lessened, controlled by the medication, but it was still there, a constant reminder of his fragility. The next morning, as promised, Arthur returned with the documents. Elliot read them carefully, although he already knew exactly what they contained. "It's all as I requested," he approved, taking the pen the lawyer offered. Before signing, he paused, the pen tip hovering over the paper. For a moment, he visualized the future he was trying to build, not in skyscrapers or bank accounts, but in opportunities for a girl who deserved every chance the world could offer. "If something happens to me, everything will be Aubrey's," he said, more to himself than to Arthur. "She is my legacy." The pen glided across the paper, signature after signature. For the first time in his life, Elliot wasn't signing a calculated contract or a cold business strategy. He was writing with his heart, that same imperfect heart a child had refused to let stop beating. As he handed the documents back to Arthur, a certainty formed within him. The fear that had haunted him the previous night, of leaving nothing of real value behind, had dissipated, because now he knew real value wasn't in the buildings bearing his name or the companies he had built. It was in the seeds planted with Aubrey on the terrace, in the stories read with Noah, in the simple dinners in Rachel's small kitchen. Real value was in the bonds he had formed, in the lives he had touched, and these bonds, Elliot was now certain, would survive far beyond his imperfect heart. Autumn painted the park trees with shades of red and gold as Elliot's car parked at the entrance. 3 weeks had passed since his hospital discharge, and though he still felt occasional twinges in his chest, He was determined to enjoy the day. The doctor had authorized light activity, and Elliot intended to stretch that concept to its limit. "Are you sure you're feeling well enough for this?" Rachel asked as she helped Noah put on his sneakers. "Never better," Elliot lied with a smile. "Did you bring your medicine?" Aubrey questioned, serious, carrying a backpack with snacks she had prepared herself. "Yes, Ma'am," Elliot replied, patting his coat pocket. "All here." She nodded, satisfied. Since his hospitalization, Aubrey had taken on the role of Elliot's medical supervisor, reminding him of his medication times with impressive punctuality. The park he chose was half an hour from the city, a less urbanized place, with gentle trails, a small lake, and open spaces for picnics, the kind of place he would never have frequented in his previous life. "Look, ducks!" Noah exclaimed as soon as they got out of the car, pointing to the lake where several birds glided peacefully. "Can we feed them?" Aubrey asked, already checking her backpack. "Of course," Elliot replied, taking a small bag from his own backpack. "I brought special duck seeds. Bread isn't good for them." Rachel raised her eyebrows, impressed. "You really thought of everything." "I tried," he admitted. "I wanted it to be a special day." And it was. They started by feeding the ducks, with Noah laughing happily each time the birds approached to take the seeds. Then they followed a gentle trail, with Elliot adjusting his pace to match Noah's short legs and, discreetly, not to strain his own heart. Aubrey walked ahead, occasionally turning back to show an interesting leaf or an unusual stone. "Did you know these trees are over 100 years old?" Elliot commented, pointing to the majestic oaks lining the trail. "Older than you?" Noah asked innocently, prompting laughter. "Much older than me, champ," Elliot replied, ruffling the boy's hair. They found a perfect picnic spot, a small clearing overlooking the lake, sheltered by old trees. Elliot spread out the blanket while Rachel arranged the food, sandwiches, fruits, juices, and the cookies Aubrey had baked the night before. "Are you okay?" Rachel asked discreetly, noticing how he leaned against a tree. "Just need to sit for a bit," he admitted. During lunch, they talked about simple things: Aubrey's science project and Noah's new friendships, the stories Rachel brought from her job at Elliot's company, where she had already been promoted. "I brought a surprise," Elliot announced after they finished. From his backpack, he pulled out an instant camera. "Wow," Aubrey exclaimed, her eyes gleaming. "Is it one of those that prints right away?" "Exactly. I thought we could make an album of this day." The following hours were filled with clicks and laughter. They took photos of everything: the ducks on the lake, the colorful trees, the clouds in the sky, but mostly photos of each other, Elliot and Noah making funny faces, Aubrey with colorful leaves arranged like a crown, Rachel with her children, and with the help of a kind passerby, a photo of all four of them together, sincere smiles under the golden afternoon light. "I want ice cream," Noah announced as the afternoon wore on. "Noah, don't be rude," Rachel gently admonished him. "Actually," Elliot interjected, "I saw an ice cream stand near the entrance. What do you think?" Noah's eyes lit up, and even Aubrey couldn't hide her enthusiasm. They walked to the colorful stand, where an elderly man served homemade ice cream. Noah chose chocolate with extra topping, Aubrey opted for strawberry, Rachel for vanilla, and Elliot for pistachio. Sitting on a bench, savoring the quickly melting ice creams, Elliot felt a peace he had never experienced before. The sun filtering through the leaves, Noah's laughter with every dripping drop of ice cream, Rachel's relaxed expression, the way Aubrey leaned against his shoulder. It was perfect. And, like all perfect things, it carried a touch of melancholy, the awareness of its fragility. As the sun began to set, they gathered their belongings. Noah, exhausted, fell asleep in the car as soon as he sat down. Aubrey, though she tried to stay awake, also fought against sleep. Arriving at the apartment, Elliot carried Noah, still asleep, while Rachel and Aubrey carried the rest of their things. "I'll put him to bed," Rachel whispered as they entered. Elliot nodded, carefully placing the boy on the sofa. Aubrey hesitated for a moment, torn between the desire to go to her own bed and the reluctance to end the day. "It was the best day," she finally said. "Thank you." "For me too, Aubrey." She approached and, in a rare gesture, hugged him briefly before heading to her room. Elliot stood in the living room, examining the photos they had taken, spreading them out on the table. Each one told a part of that perfect day. Noah's smile, Aubrey's concentrated expression, Rachel's serene gaze. When she returned, he was still organizing the pictures. "They fell asleep instantly," she commented, sitting beside him. "You managed to completely exhaust them." "And myself," Elliot admitted with a tired smile. Rachel studied him for a moment. "You should have told us you weren't fully recovered yet. We could have postponed. And miss a day like this, never." She smiled, picking up one of the photos, the one of the four of them together. "It turned out great. I'll frame it." A comfortable silence settled as they continued to organize the photographs. Her natural intimacy had developed, not romantic, but deep nonetheless, an understanding that transcended words. "Rachel," Elliot said finally, knowing the moment had come. "We need to talk about something." She looked up, alert. "What's wrong? Is it your heart?" "Yes and no." He took a deep breath. "The heart problem I have, it's chronic. I can live for decades with the right medication, proper exercise, medical follow-up. Or I could have another episode tomorrow." Rachel said nothing, but her expression showed she understood the gravity of the situation. "I found out I have a heart condition. I don't know how much time I have." Elliot paused, gathering his strength. "But if something happens, find my lawyer, Arthur Mendez. Your future is guaranteed." "Elliot, please, let me finish," he requested gently. "I've modified my will. I've set up funds for the children's education, for your financial security. No matter what happens to me, you'll never have to worry about money again." Rachel remained silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the photographs. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm, despite her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Elliot, we don't just want your name on a piece of paper. We want you here." The words hit him with a force no contract ever had. It was so simple, and yet so profound. They wanted him, not for his money, not for his influence, just for being who he was. "Then I'll stay," Elliot replied, his voice hoarse with emotion. "As long as I can, I'll stay." Rachel reached out her hand and he took it, a simple gesture that sealed a promise greater than any legal document. Versi Kudriade 6 months later. The aroma of freshly baked cake filled the apartment, colorful balloons decorated the living room, and a handmade banner proclaimed, "Happy Birthday, Aubrey," in large, colorful letters, Noah's handiwork. "I bet she's already seen the decorations," Rachel commented, placing the last plate on the table. "Impossible to hide anything from her." "Agreed," Elliot replied, adjusting the bow tie Noah had insisted he wear. "But she'll pretend to be surprised, for Noah." As predicted, when Aubrey entered, guided by her brother who insisted she keep her eyes closed, her expression of surprise was convincing enough to delight Noah, but not to fool the adults. "So wow," she exclaimed, looking around. "You did all this?" "I made the banner," Noah proudly proclaimed, "and I helped with the cake." "It's all perfect," Aubrey smiled, hugging him. Dinner was simple but joyful. Rachel had prepared Aubrey's favorite dish, homemade lasagna. Noah told jokes that only made sense to himself, but everyone laughed anyway. Elliot watched it all with a quiet smile, occasionally exchanging glances with Rachel when the children said something particularly funny. His life had completely changed. He still ran his companies, still had responsibilities, but now there was a balance that had been missing before. 3 times a week he had dinner with Rachel and the children. On weekends, they often did something together. A walk, a movie, a visit to the botanical garden. His apartment, once sterile and impersonal, now bore clear traces of the children. Aubrey's books on the shelves, Noah's drawings on the refrigerator, a bedroom transformed into a space for them when they stayed over. And his heart, though still physically damaged, had never been healthier in other respects. After the cake, chocolate with strawberry frosting, Aubrey's favorite combination, it was time for presents. Noah gave his sister a picture frame made of painted pasta. Rachel gifted her a set of drawing pencils she knew she coveted. When it was Elliot's turn, he handed her a small, carefully wrapped package. Aubrey opened it delicately, revealing a soft leather-bound journal with her name embossed on the cover. The pages were thick paper, perfect for writing and small drawings. "Open the first page," Elliot suggested softly. Aubrey obeyed. There, in Elliot's elegant handwriting, was a dedication. "You gave me a reason. Now I want to see what you'll do with your story." She looked at him, her eyes shining, and then did something rare. She stood up and hugged him tightly, without reservation. "Thank you," she whispered. "No," he replied softly. "Thank you." Later, when the children were already in bed and Elliot helped Rachel clean up the last vestiges of the party, they shared a moment of silence in the kitchen. "She loved the journal," Rachel commented, putting away the dishes. "I hope so. Aubrey has important stories to tell. Like all of us, don't we?" Rachel smiled, leaning against the counter. "Thus you look well, Elliot. Better every day." It was true. Although he still took daily medication and had regular checkups, his health had stabilized. He followed his diet, did the recommended exercises, and most importantly, he lived with purpose. "I never thought my life would take this turn," he confessed. "Yes, but I wouldn't change a thing. Not even the heart attack on the plane," she teased gently. "Especially that. It's what brought me to you all." As he left the apartment that night, Elliot looked at the bedroom window where Aubrey slept, likely already dreaming of the stories she would write in her new journal. The girl who had saved his life had given him much more than a few extra minutes of existence. She had shown him how to truly live. In the months and years that followed, their relationship only strengthened. Rachel continued to ascend in the company, eventually taking over the social responsibility division. Aubrey flourished in school, her creativity finding new outlets. Noah grew strong and healthy, his repaired heart functioning perfectly. And Elliot, the man who once defined his life by contracts and acquisitions, found a greater purpose. He continued taking his medication, having regular checkups, managing his condition. There were better and worse days, as with any chronic illness, but in all of them, he was surrounded by people who loved him for who he was, not for what he possessed. In a world that often measures success in numbers and possessions, Elliot Graves had discovered a simple truth. True legacy isn't in what we leave behind when we're gone, but in the lives we touch while we're here. He didn't disappear, he stayed. And with that, he left a living and whole legacy. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.